The assignment came down through 3 layers of bureaucracy before it reached Red, which meant that by the time it landed on his desk it had been stripped of all context, all warning, and apparently all common sense. Duty posting, effective immediately. Officer R. Calloway, reassigned. Nursery guard detail. Location, Velsoren Pride Sanctuary, Level 9. Duration, 30 standard days. Special notes, none. Rhett read it twice. Then he read the part that said special notes. None a third time. Because in his 11 years of interspecies security work, special notes, none had never once meant what it claimed to mean. It meant the person writing this memo didn't want to be the one to tell you. He picked up his gear and went to Level 9. The Velsoren were not, technically, cats. This was a distinction that approximately 0 humans managed to maintain after first contact, because the Velsoren were, by every visual metric available to human pattern recognition, cats. Large ones. Bipedal, which was unusual. Possessed of a sophisticated interstellar civilization, which was less unusual in the current galactic landscape. But the ears, the eyes, the retractable claws, the way they moved like water finding its level. The human brain took one look at all of this and filed it under cat, and absolutely refused to retrieve it. The Velsoren found this deeply offensive. They were apex predators from a world with 3 times Earth's gravity, capable of accelerating to sprint speed in 0.3 seconds, with claws that could shear durasteel and a territorial instinct so deeply encoded in their neurology that guarding their young was not a job they assigned to outsiders. It was not a job they assigned to allies. It was barely a job they assigned to family members they trusted. Assigning it to a human was either an act of profound diplomatic respect or a catastrophic administrative error. Standing in front of the Level 9 blast doors, Rhett was betting on the latter. Commander Celera was waiting for him on the other side. He recognized her from the briefing files, Senior Pride Commander, decorated in 4 border conflicts, personally responsible for ending the Kareth incursion through what the official report described as decisive tactical action and what the unofficial account described as walking into the enemy command tent alone and coming back 20 minutes later without a scratch, while everyone inside required immediate medical attention. She was tall, even for Velsoren. Her fur was the deep charcoal of a winter storm, striped with silver at the temples in the way that, on a Velsoren, marked not age but rank earned through genuine consequence. Her eyes were gold, not amber, not hazel, gold the way a warning light was gold, and they were currently performing a comprehensive threat assessment of Rhett that he estimated would conclude within the next 4 seconds. He stood still and let her finish. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, in crisp galactic standard, "You are the guard." "Apparently," Rhett said. "You are human." "Also apparently." Her tail. And this, Rhett had learned, was the real emotional vocabulary of the Velsoren, the thing their faces were trained to conceal and their tails were not, moved in a slow, controlled arc that his study files categorized as skeptical restraint. She was being diplomatic about her doubts. He respected that. "The cubs," she said, "are inside. There are 11 of them. They range from 6 weeks to 4 months of age." A pause that carried significant weight. "They are energetic." Noted. "They have claws." "I've read the file." "The file," Celera said, with a precision that suggested she found the file inadequate, describes their physical capabilities in clinical terms. It does not capture the application of those capabilities. "Are they dangerous?" Rhett asked. She looked at him. "To you? Sure." The tail arc shifted to something his study files didn't have a clean category for. He filed it under complicated. "Our cubs," she said carefully, "are not dangerous in the way adults are dangerous. They are dangerous in the way that a thing with no self-preservation instinct and functional weaponry is dangerous. They do not intend harm. They simply do not yet understand consequences," Rhett said. She stopped, looked at him differently. "Yes. I grew up with younger siblings," he said. "How different can it be?" The expression that crossed Celera's face was one he would come to know well over the following 30 days. It was the expression of someone who had just heard something that was either very wise or very foolish and had not yet determined which. She stepped aside and opened the door. The sound hit him first. It was not a roar. Cubs that young didn't roar. The file had been clear on that. But it was in the family of roars, the way a sketch was in the family of a painting. high-pitched, overlapping, chaotic, and deeply enthusiastic about itself. It was the sound of 11 small apex predators who had opinions about everything and the lung capacity to share them. Then they saw him. 11 cubs. The oldest ones, close to 4 months, were roughly the size of a large dog, already bipedal but not committed to it, switching between 2 feet and 4 with the casual flexibility of creatures who hadn't yet decided which posture suited their personality better. The youngest, 6 weeks, were the size of a house cat and currently piled on top of each other in a corner in the way that small warm things piled together when the world was overwhelming. All 11 of them went completely, utterly silent. They stared at Rhett. Rhett stared back. This, he thought, looking at 11 pairs of golden amber eyes arranged in various stages of surprise, is the most dangerous situation I have ever been in, and I once defused a pressure mine in a flooding cargo hold. Then the largest cub, 4 months, charcoal fur, already showing the first ghost of what would eventually be an impressive build, took 3 steps toward him, stopped, and made a sound that was not in any of his study files. It was small, questioning, the vocal equivalent of a raised hand. Rhett said, "Hi." The cub made the sound again. Behind him, he heard Celera make a sharp exhale through her nose that he was almost certain was suppressed laughter. By the end of the first hour, 2 cubs had claimed his lap. This was not a situation Rhett had strategized toward. It had simply occurred, the way gravity occurred, the way weather occurred, with a sense of inevitability that made planning feel retrospectively naive. The 2 youngest cubs, the 6-week pile, had migrated from their corner in stages, first watching from a distance, then creeping incrementally closer in the careful way of things that wanted something very much but were uncertain of welcome, until finally they were simply there, warm and heavy and vibrating with a subsonic rumble that Rhett recognized, with a jolt of pure involuntary warmth, as purring. Velsoren did not purr, technically. The file had been clear on this. The vocalization was called resonance comfort expression in the scientific literature, which was a name invented by someone who had clearly never had a 4-month-old cub fall asleep on their left knee with its claws half extended into their thigh. Purring, Rhett thought, sitting very still so as not to disturb either of them. Absolutely purring. The older cubs were less inclined toward stillness. 3 of them were currently investigating him with the systematic thoroughness of tiny scientists who had been assigned human. What is it? As their thesis topic. One had his boot lace. One was attempting to determine, through direct application of claws, whether his jacket was structurally interesting. One had climbed partially up his back and was examining his ear with an intensity usually associated with professional jewelers. "You're going to want to be still for that one," Celera said from the doorway. He'd almost forgotten she was there. "Noted," he said, very quietly. "She going to?" "Probably not." A pause. "The ear thing is a trust behavior. She's deciding whether you're safe." "What's the verdict criteria?" "She'll stop when she's satisfied." Another pause. "Or she'll bite." One of the two. The cub at his ear made a small, decisive sound, nothing like a bite, and then tucked her head against the side of his neck with the absolute confidence of a creature that had made up its mind. Rhett did not move. Something behind his sternum did something complicated. The predators arrived on day 4. Not the cubs, the adults. A delegation of 3 Velsoren males from a neighboring pride who had business with the sanctuary administration and who had been routed, through some scheduling failure that Rhett suspected was deliberate, directly past the Level 9 nursery at the precise moment Rhett was attempting to convince the 4-month charcoal cub, who had, over 96 hours, acquired the working name Trouble in Rhett's private mental catalog, to release the cub she had pinned. The 3 adults stopped in the corridor and looked through the observation window. The scene in the nursery, one human, sitting cross-legged on the floor, with 2 cubs on his lap, one on his back, one on each shoulder, one determinately attacking his boot, and one, Trouble, currently doing something to a slightly smaller cub that appeared to be a territorial dispute over Rhett's right knee. Rhett was, as the adults watched, doing the following. Using his left hand to gently disengage Trouble without injury to either party. Using his right hand to maintain a stabilizing contact with the cub on his back, who was becoming interested in his hair, saying something low and calm in what appeared to be 2 languages simultaneously, and managing to keep both lap cubs asleep through all of it. The 3 adult males, warriors, All of them, decorated, serious, not easily impressed. Watched for approximately 30 seconds. Then the oldest one said, in Velsoren, not realizing Rhett had a translation implant. The human is using 4-point attention management. Simultaneously, the second one, the young ones have accepted him as pride. The third, quietly, that is not possible. He is not Velsoren. The first, even more quietly, tell that to the cubs. Celera found him on day 12 at 0300 station time, sitting alone in the nursery in the dark with all 11 cubs asleep around him in a configuration that suggested spontaneous gravitational collapse toward his general vicinity. She stood in the doorway for a moment before speaking. "You have not left this room in 16 hours, she said. "2 of them had a respiratory thing in the afternoon," he said, without looking up. He was tracking sleep breathing, counting the rhythms the way his mother had once taught him to count the breathing of sick kids. It passed. I wanted to make sure. She was quiet. "The respiratory pattern in Velsoren cubs," she said finally, "is something most guards don't bother to monitor. The file doesn't mention it." "No," he agreed. "How did you know to watch for it?" He looked down at Trouble, who had claimed his right side with the proprietary certainty she applied to everything and was now producing deep, slow resonance comfort expression against his ribs. "I didn't," he said. "I just stayed." Celera walked into the room, quietly, the way she did when she didn't want to wake them, and sat across from him. In the dark, surrounded by sleeping cubs, she looked less like a decorated commander and more like something older. Something that had worried about small things for a long time. "We did not expect this," she said. "What? This?" A gesture that encompassed the room, the cubs, him. "We assigned a human to the nursery because the request came in and 3 of our own guards had scheduling conflicts, and it was meant to be temporary. And we did not think," she stopped. "You didn't think it mattered," Rhett said. "Because I'm human. And humans don't. Humans are from a death world," she said, and it came out differently than he'd heard it said before. Not dismissive, not the xenophobic shorthand for primitive or reckless. Something closer to honest. "We know what that means in combat. We know what that means in crisis." "We did not know. We had not considered." Another pause. "What?" he said. She looked at the sleeping cubs. At him. At the shape of the room. "We did not know," she said quietly, "what it means in this." Rhett looked down at Trouble, who shifted in her sleep and pressed closer, and said nothing, because some things didn't need translation. On day 30, the reassignment notice came through. Duty posting concluded. Officer R. Calloway returned to standard rotation. Effective 0800. He read it in the nursery, with Trouble reading over his shoulder in the way she'd started doing sometime around day 8, with calm authority, as though administrative documents were within her purview. She made a sound. He said, "I know." She made the sound again, louder. "I know," he said again. "I'm working on it." The formal request landed on Commander Solara's desk at 0745. Extension of guard posting, Level 9 Nursery. Submitted by Officer R. Calloway. Reason: continuity of care. The cubs have established trust patterns that would be disrupted by transition. Recommend 30-day extension minimum. 60 preferred. Celera read it twice. Her tail moved through an arc that her subordinates, watching from across the office, had never seen before. It took them several seconds to identify it. It was the arc for pride. She approved the extension in under a minute. The Velsoren Nursery Guard Corps, established the following year, became the first interspecies care program in the Galactic Council's history. Humans applied in numbers that surprised everyone except Rhett. The intake form included one question that no other program had thought to ask. "Are you willing to stay?" Humans, it turned out, almost always said yes.